Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Because this is Airwindows Dynamics2. And the interesting thing about this one is it's probably not perfectly done. This is the compression and gating to go into ConsoleH, and also ConsoleX2, which I used on this track from last week, and didn't actually use any of the compression or gating because I was demonstrating Chimey Deluxe, which is its own compression. But I've got this on tap now, and it's under development. I'm still finding ways that I can try to make it slightly better, but let me take a moment and show you what it can do now. And I'll stop that overall music, and let's jump over to drums. So we got threshold, attack, release, and gate. This is meant to be very understandable and approachable, because what I had in ConsoleX was completely over the top and far too much trouble. Threshold brings up sort of your background as it clamps down on the peaks and dynamic heads to the point where you can exaggerate it. Attack lets you speed up or slow down the attack, and that sounds kind of like this. Faster attack. And yes, you get to go to unreasonable settings. Watch this. Unreasonable settings. Or slow it down. Until you have a big dynamic spike on top of that. And again, release works similarly, although I'm going to tell you exactly how it's not quite how you'd expect. See, we've clearly got a faster release going on here, or we can slow it down. There we go, looping again. And this is all well and good, but it's not exactly like a normal compressor would be. And I'll tell you why. This is actually two BeziComps stacked up. BeziComp is the invention that I made that's a little unusual. It's not how compressors normally work, but it has the advantage of it's able to move its compression degree rapidly, but it's always on a curve, so it can never provide a click of attack or artifacts like as if it's catching on to a bass note and adding a sort of buzz to it. It can't actually do that because it needs to operate on a Bezier curve, which is what you're hearing. You're hearing the dynamics swing up in a curve, potentially very rapidly, and then back down again. So you can dial in oddities like this, where we've got a big spike on the attack, and then the dynamics is swinging right down to the point of dynamic inversion, but there's no actual points to the envelope curve of how that compressor works. So essentially this produces a compressor that never has a artifact to the way the dynamics move. And that is the same as in BeziComp, which is out, and you do have that available. But in fact, BeziComp is also the technique in place in, for instance, Chimey Deluxe. Thing is, we also get to use this as a gate. Now you might not hear it doing anything. If I turn off the bass, you still don't hear it doing anything, and that is because the position where it kicks in is very sensitive, and that rides off of the release. Watch this. Not much motion of that slider to get to this place. And then, of course, gate operates as a level. I'm basically taking out the hat this way because it's not loud enough to trigger the gate. And then I can speed it up even more. Now I've got the head in there, but the whole thing is being gated so aggressively that it's like it's trying to crackle with compression artifacts, and yet these aren't quite compression artifacts because the dynamic curve, that's still a Bezier curve. It's just working on a gate now. So what's going to happen is the attack that would be a click with a gate this fast is not a click on the onset because the dynamics are forming a Bezier curve of flying open as fast as possible, and then it shuts down afterwards. And of course, we can go farther. And we can throw in the compression. In ConsoleX, I have to put this not in console. In ConsoleH, I have to put the sensitivity for this after the crazy bit crush thing, because the bit crush thing can throw out constant roar and noise, and this gate has to be able to cut that off. So we're using compression to turn this into something completely else, and we can also throw the bass on, or indeed this is as close as you can get to having the release so fast that the bass kind of snarls and roars. Here's what happens when we pull the release back down to a more reasonable speed. Now that's a continuous bass sound, so there's nothing much that I can do as far as making it entirely cut out. It's pretty much playing throughout. I can throw the kick in there as well. And just raise it. And I think I've got the compression aggressively mutating everything, so yep, that was the compression after all. So we can make the release be much quicker, since it was actually the compression doing all of that. In fact, we'll turn the compression off entirely, and it's the attack speed also that was doing that. And this is as close as you can get to making the compressor sort of buzz and rasp on the deep bass notes, which would otherwise be happening constantly. Not even all of the notes are triggering this, and yet the gate is still behaving fairly normally. And it's doing the thing of like, so this is a bass tone, so maybe we're trying to cut out background noise on it or something, hum or buzz. And we've got the gate way too high. And this is as close as you get to having the gate removing most of the bass part and snapping open only on the attack. So this is sort of an artificial sound that you can make out of this. And we slow it down just enough that it is no different from bypass. I'm turning bypass on and off, and that's all we get. But if that bass stops, it goes dead silent instantly. I don't know whether I'm going to get any actual tracks in there, but I can bring all the tracks in, and then the same thing will happen. Again, this is Dynamics2. And you have the opportunity of speeding up all the attacks and releases and things to unreasonable amounts. Like, listen to how high that pitch goes. We're making it do a completely artificial thing now because attack and release are both far too fast to be effective in any way. And then as we bring release in, we begin starting to bring it back down in level to the point where it can be really, really slow indeed. And then slow down attack. And this is a threshold control where it is cranked so hard that it's trying to crush itself down to silence. And then all you got to do to make it behave is pull threshold back down again. Here we have heavily compressed. And then we can keep pulling it back until you can't tell the difference between this and bypass. And there you have it. So yeah, Dynamics2 is a work in progress. There's some things I'm thinking about continuing to do, so the version you might end up seeing in ConsoleX could be even better than this. The reason you're seeing it, rather than it just sitting there being worked on, is because the last live stream, and I do all kinds of things in my live streams, like 2 live streams ago I was derping around in Minecraft. The last live stream, I was tinkering with a video game. I mean, if I was able to move a camera up to my drum room, again, you'd be able to see me fooling around with this, which is a big old drum head. It is actually a coated ambassador, which I had on there earlier, because this is the one that I painted with gesso to try to make it like a early 70s decorated drum head producing the really deep sounds. Like, for instance, I recently did one of my Patreon things with Pink Floyd's Echoes, and that is known for having a bass drum that is so completely subsonic that you more or less can't hear it at all. And that's partly studio engineering, but that's very likely also partly the literal drum setup. And I put the gesso drum head on my kick drum and then decided I did not like it as much as I'd thought, so I replaced it with a really light head, and that's what you heard on this track. But now that I've removed some of the paint from this one, I'm probably going to be putting that back on again, because I keep trying to work on the stuff that I do more or less on all fronts. And that can cover a pretty wide range. Again, the last live stream that I did wasn't any of this. This last week has been sort of an unwind week for me a little bit. So one day it was derping in Minecraft, and the other day it was a video game that I would like to continue to develop based on the one that I had back in the day called Counterpart. Yes, I made a video game back in the day. It's a vibe. I did all the music and sound effects and stuff for it as well, but the graphics are really the vibe. But for now, you're getting Dynamics2 because at the end of the last live stream, I asked, hey, so what plugin would you like to get this weekend? And immediately heard Dynamics2, which I worked on stream a while back. And so I could continue to pursue this further, but did that sound interesting to you? Did it seem like it was more approachable maybe than something really complicated like the Stonefire EQ Dynamics mess that I put into ConsoleX just to be sort of over the top? If so, here you go. I might be able to make it better. In fact, I'm looking at a number of ideas for maybe being able to do that. You'll notice that as you boosted threshold really, really low and the makeup gain kicked in, it was possible to get a really gnarly result out of attack even when release was fairly slow. It did not behave like a normal compressor would when attack is one linear thing and then release is another linear thing, because instead it's two BeziComps sort of laid end to end. And that's what you get when you do that. There's a whole little crossfade thing in there as well. Point being, I hope you enjoy the use of Dynamics2 while I continue to do the rest of this work. It's all paid for by Patreon. There's a bunch of people on the Patreon, so you've got me busily doing this, and getting through ConsoleH and ConsoleX2 is paid for. Probably the more I get out of the Patreon, the more I can do. But I'm doing as much as I possibly can now anyhow, so that's just more resources rather than getting me to try to work harder, because that's kind of not a thing. I'm kind of already doing that. Lastly, I'm here every week. That's what that gets you. So if you're new to all of this, or if you think this is a neat plugin, not only am I going to try to top it and make an even better Dynamics plugin to go into the upcoming console versions, but there's going to be another plugin next week, whether or not it's that one. And there's going to be another plugin after that. I mean, it's paid for. I'll be back. I'm here every week. So I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.